can make it to those things, sometimes they often have that in Las Vegas, but sometimes they'll move it around to different places. But it's um, I forget what the acronym stands for. It's KBIS, um, Kitchen and Bath Industry something. But that's like a national, it's a national convention really every year. Uh, if you're, if it interests you, if something that you want to know more about, or even like if you think like kitchen and bath design is what you want to do, it's a good thing to get into and to check out. So with the if that's it's not an official like field trip or anything like that to go to the meeting next Tuesday night. So you don't have to fill out a field trip form. Um, I'm going to be there, but it's not like an organized, like interior design club activity. On October 6th, however, is NeoCon. That week, the October 4, 5, and 6 is NeoCon, which is an international trade fair for interior design. It's a lot of commercial stuff. And they have keynote speaker, like they have a couple people like giving like keynote addresses every day. Those are all sold out for the in-person attendance. At this point, I'm probably not interested in like going to a big lecture and with hundreds of people. Anyway, but they also do have an option if you sign up to go to NeoCon, you can like get like a pass to see it like virtually. And on Monday of that, Gene Gang, who's a important Chicago architect, is giving the address on that day. But there's a link in the announcements to NeoCon's website, and there's also a form, a field trip release form. If you're going to go to NeoCon on that Wednesday and meet me inside the main entrance at about 10 a.m., then you need to fill out that form and get it to me like next week. Earlier the better, so I can forward them to the dean. If you just want to go to NeoCon, you just go like, oh, hey, what's up? And then just like go on to some showrooms, you wouldn't have to fill that out. But if we're doing, like for any kind of organized activity off campus, I have to have you fill that out. And they want it, the dean wants it submitted 2 weeks before the thing happens. So that's next Wednesday. So think about it, decide, fill out the form and send it back to me, and I'll forward it to the dean.
Where is the form? Is that on the announcements?
There's an attachment to the announcements, yes. Here, let me show you. Share my screen.
Do you know how long those last? Are they all day? Are they?
NeoCon is all day. 3 days, all day, all night. Nonstop interior design party.
You know how long we would be there that day?
It's, I'm not going to be there all day because I have to get home and get ready to teach this class. But I would like to go to it because I haven't been to it in a few years. And so I would probably be there for like 2 or 3 hours myself.
Okay, so we can kind of leave at our leisure, or
yes.
even if we go with you, or
yes, you don't have to stick with me. Honestly, once you get there and you look around, everybody wants to go see something different, and then you should. So, and there's a lot of, I'm not sure what they got. Like, sometimes by Wednesday, they've given away all the best swag from the showrooms. But you can still get samples, and if you do it, usually what happens is, you go there as a student and you leave with bags and bags of stuff.
Yes.
showrooms are like, oh, here, take some of this. Like, oh, here, we're giving away. Most of the time, like any other day, if you just go to the merchandise mart, you can't go into the showrooms. You have to go as a designer or with a designer. But during NeoCon, all the showrooms are open. So that's a reason to go. So you see here.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, there's a link, and if you've never been to the merchandise mart, it is the world's largest commercial building in terms of square footage. Maybe that's not true anymore, but for the longest time, that was their claim, one of their claims to fame. So here, click the link to NeoCon. It sometimes takes a minute. They've got some slick graphics, and so it takes time for it to come up here. But like down over on the right at the top is register. They do have they have a requirement that you be vaccinated or that you have a negative COVID test, like in the last, I think, few days or something like that. They have a link to an app to upload your vaccination status documents. I wouldn't do that. They also offer you the option of bringing proof of vaccination when you pick up your badge on the day that you attend. Okay, so the NeoCon website takes a long time to load because they've got a lot of interesting graphics. But we're just going to come back here. This right here is the fillable waiver form. You can download it, fill it out. And let's see how long, this should not be taking such a long time. There you go. So here, you can say, so you could say ID Club, then you can say NeoCon, Merchandise Mart. I'll send you guys, I'll give you I guess I should put up the address. Okay, I guess I'm going to have to give you this information. Darn it. I'll give you my phone number. Okay. You have to do that for the accommodation. Destination is the Merchandise Mart in Chicago. This is self-transport. I am not driving a bus, which would be fun in itself, but it's not really feasible. Okay, so all right, I'll look at that and put information up about all the information that you need for that. Okay, there you go, signature. Okay. Okay, well, I see I'm going to have to give you guys a little bit extra information. Okay, hopefully that's clear. Metro is a really good way to get down there and back out to the northwestern suburbs, especially with the way traffic is on the Kennedy. So that's something to consider. The Metro Ogilvy station is not too far from the merchandise mart. So it might be worth it to do Metro instead of driving. Okay. Very, very good. All right. So today we're talking about we're going to go from Rome to the European Middle Ages, and Rome as an empire was really kind of not built to last. It got too big, spread out too far. Administrative corruption was common, and they made a lot of enemies. Where is my Yep. They made a lot of enemies. The let's go. There we go. They the middle of the sixth century. No, 5th century. It was like 450 something. Um, the dates aren't really that important for our class. The city of Rome was invaded and captured by the Visigoths, and a lot of the Roman administration left and went east to what was known as Byzantium, the city of Constantinople that was really kind of like established by the emperor, the Roman Emperor Constantine, as the eastern, as like a, I guess the eastern capital of the Roman Empire. It's the same place as the modern day city of Istanbul in Turkey. Originally, that was Constantinople, and the sort of Christian empire that was originally like the sort of like the place that the Roman Empire fled to, that became known as Byzantium, which is Latin, which means, I guess like it is sort of like the realm of the Byzantines. Byzantium was originally one of those Greek colonies where I think it was the city of Megara sent its excess population out, and they founded the city, this like colony of, I think it was originally called, oh, I can't remember. It's something. It's Byzantium is Latin, and there's a Greek version of that. Not that important for our class. So originally a Greek colony, so the Greek language was always very important to the Byzantines, as opposed to Latin. And the Eastern Church, like they went out, the Christianity in Russia, for example, and other Slavic countries that use the Cyrillic alphabet, that originally came from Byzantium. So, okay. So so early like Europe, like places like we think of now, like France, Germany, England, did not exist. There were earlier civilizations, not as advanced as the Romans, and like the Gauls and the Celts. The Romans called the Germans Germans, and there were a lot of. It was kind of disorganized. The remnants of the Roman Empire kind of held things together from an administrative standpoint, but European civilization it was several steps back in sophistication from the Romans. So you see, like medieval Christian art, it just doesn't. It seems like it lacks the sophistication of Roman art, and it's because a lot of the people who knew how to do things left and went east. Okay, so a basilica is a type of Christian church, but originally is a Roman building with a long double colonnade and a semicircular apse. The apse is at the end. An ancient, so that's the church. Roman building type for law courts or assemblies. It was a model for early Christian churches, and later a designation for churches given papal privileges. That is a basilica. Now you know. And so here you see there's this gatehouse and an atrium with a fountain. you won't need to know all these, like narthex. You don't need to remember narthex, although it's an excellent word. The nave is the central, like the longer central part of a church. Side aisles, clerestory, those clerestory windows. The transept is the cross, and the apse is like the end of it, which is, in a Christian church, is where the altar is. Interestingly, not unlike an Egyptian temple complex. Smaller, simpler. I find that interesting. Here is a more modern drawing of what old St. Peter's in Rome might have looked like. So the Christian architecture is, sort of like starts out really as Roman architecture, and the Christians, as you may know, in the Roman Empire were persecuted and eventually established themselves, thanks to some important people converting to Christianity, like Constantine. And so even before the Roman Empire fell, there were Christian churches. Okay, a plan. So that's 330 of the Common Era, AD if it's to be old-fashioned. And the CA, it says began CA 330. That means around or approximately. It's often, especially the older things get, the less precise the dates are. But they've got some idea based on other information that this church was begun around 330 CE. A perspective view. This looks like this is from like an engraving from like the 15th or 16th century. So it gives you some idea of what the interior looked like. Okay. A Byzantine decorative mosaic, a Palatium. Greek. So you see the Greek fret or meander, and the flat and cartoonish representation of buildings and space. This is, one reason why I show you Byzantine, something like Byzantine mosaic like this. Not just, mosaic was something that they excelled at, but their representation was, it lacks the sophistication of the Romans. And also, like, when you see figurative work, it's really far away from the ancient Greeks. Okay, so here you can see in the center, Constantinople. That is the city established by the Roman Emperor Constantine, and that's Byzantium. That is the capital. You see Rome to the west. Ravenna is a place where there was Byzantine influence all throughout the Mediterranean, and Ravenna has some really beautiful churches with Byzantine mosaics in it. There briefly was the capital of Rome while they were figuring out where to go after the Visigoths trashed Rome. Okay, so here we're in like, here this is like around like 500, 600 of the Common Era. And here we go. Hagia Sophia. So originally a church, later a mosque. Now it is a museum. It's an international heritage site. Okay, the names of the architects you won't have to remember, but I think it's always nice to know them. And Hagia Sophia means holy wisdom. Okay. So yes, and 1453 was when the city of Constantinople fell to the Turks, and it became a Turkish, it came under Turkish rule ever since. Okay, here's a section of Hagia Sophia. So you notice that what looks kind of like a double dome, that is, and here's a section of the Pantheon to compare it. The plan of this, let's go to here. So this is an interior, and you can see that central dome is set upon arches. And it is the right. So a pendentive dome. It's like well, it's kind of like an improvement on I guess just like a single dome. It allows you to create a taller interior, and where the dome is like the central dome is set upon 4 arches. Okay? And architectural details. There's this kind of like in like the Byzantium, like Byzantine architecture, you get this combination of Roman and Greek and Persian ornament, which I think is it's unique to the world, and I think it's very interesting stuff. So that the curving triangular corner there, that's a pendentive construction. All right. So that's about, I think it's like close to 30 stories tall inside. Pretty big. All right, so here is a mosaic of Christ enthroned. And again, so this like the sophistication of the representation of the figure, the folds in the fabric are gorgeous. And like that, like the blue and the gold and all like the decorative qualities of it are really beautiful. But the representation of the figure, even though this is mosaic, the Greeks, didn't do a ton of mosaic, figurative work. But yeah, even like going from the Romans to this, it is a step back in sophistication. Not that it's bad, but when we get to something like the Renaissance painters, which figure into interior decoration, you'll see how they bring it back. All right, so here is San Vitale in Ravenna, a church from the 6th century. Relatively small church in the, well, sort of has this octagonal circular organization. Lots of ornament, and really just crammed it. They have this crammed in there. The stone, like that marble used for the columns, is really quite beautiful, and the capitals, that's sort of like flared out. Not quite like a bell-shaped Egyptian capital, not really Roman or Greek. Really more, I think, more Eastern, more Persian. But all you see every surface is covered in ornament, or it's that really cool marble. It's a close-up of one of the capitals. Almost looks kind of like, I mean, in a way, it looks reminds me a little bit of Louis Sullivan, or Louis Sullivan reminds me of this. This very like interesting, organic, leafy. So, so I show you these. I show you this, and I emphasize this detail because it's unique. It really is almost like it's a combination of multiple cultures coming together. Here's an example from Sicily from the 9th century. Mosaics are from 1170, so from the 12th century. Palace of the Normans. The Europeans at this, like in the Middle Ages, were like moving all around. So there were like, people from the north fighting to hold on to territory in Sicily. The Crusades, where the Christians were trying to conquer what they considered to be their holy land, the birth of their Christian religion, and trying to take territory from Muslims. That brought a lot of there was just like a lot of they were I mean, pretty much like the northern and western Europeans were in the Mediterranean and the Eastern Mediterranean. So Normans are like Vikings, early, like in also like early English. They're all called Norman. So this beautiful mosaic. One thing about the Byzantine culture is that it really, in terms of like the representation, doesn't change a lot. The Byzantine Empire is around for about 1,000 years, and like the Egyptians, which is very conservative, also, their art doesn't change. You see, like the stylization of the figure, like this stuff. Early in their civilization, like early in the Byzantine Empire, late in the Byzantine Empire, it all kind of looks like this. And that's because the way they do things is approved by God, it is endorsed by God, and who in the world would dare suggest to have a better idea? That'll get you in trouble. So, but it's not that there aren't influences, but this is gorgeous. I love the way this pattern, it's definitely a pattern, but it's like you gotta like really study it. I mean, this is really more like Islamic, very complex like patterns laid on patterns. Persian patterning is really, I think, some of the best. Okay, so all right, so that's early Christian. First, you get Byzantine. That's still like in the like Eastern Mediterranean. Now, Romanesque. Romanesque. Does anyone know what Romanesque means?
Like Roman, derivative of Roman?
Yes, it's like the Romans. It's not Roman. It's similar to the term Hellenistic is sort of Greek-like. Romanesque means it's Romanesque. It means it's like Rome. And this is the Europeans starting to successfully bring back elements of Roman architecture. All right, so these churches, the Romanesque churches, so this is early Middle Ages, or I guess maybe like Middle Ages. The Middle Ages start I think people will argue about when exactly they start. Not that important. When the Roman Empire fell, oh gosh, it must have. I'm going to say 453. From there until 1400, 1500, all of that it could be considered the Middle Ages. everything isn't always the same everywhere. And so, around, let's see, when did we get our first one? 1080, there we go. So yeah, so there were pilgrimage routes. So pilgrimage, what's a pilgrimage? Does anyone know what a pilgrimage is?
It's a journey.
Excellent. It indeed is it is a journey. And
To
for
any holy place.
Hmm?
To any holy place that is generally referred to as a pilgrimage.
So in this case, there's a religious destination. You're going to a specific church to see something, and one of the churches that in I guess the middle of the Middle Ages became established. I guess they became, some of them began to become wealthy. They also became like a something that was like a part of reestablishing a stable civilization, because that there was something going on. There was an economy. There was a reason to go to this place, and there was a certain amount of security and stability with having a large church. So the holy relics, some churches, churches held holy relics, and that's why people would go to these churches. I recall a comical story from my time getting my history degree that there were two churches during the Middle Ages that claimed to have the skull of John the Baptist. Now, it's doubtful that either one of them had the actual skull, but hey, who knows? But it's I think we all can understand that there really there were not two skulls of John the Baptist, but it was something to draw people to your church, and so people would travel far, very far, to go see these relics, to pray before the relics, to make a donation to the church, to buy souvenirs at the church. They sold souvenirs, and these are also places where that had miracles associated with them. You pray before a relic, and you are cured of an illness. I can't speak to the veracity of any of that, but that's I've been to churches that have relics, and it's very meaningful to a lot of people. So here, Saint Cernine, Saint Cernine in Toulouse, which is in present-day France. It was, I guess it would have been, I guess, borders were very flexible in those days. But here you can see the nave, the long section, the transept that's underneath the spire. Come on. There we go. So here's the interior. So you see a Roman barrel vault for the ceiling. There are, I'm not sure, that's not really it's hard to see. It looks like it's sort of like a facsimile or sort of an attempt at a Corinthian capital. And so features of Romanesque architecture are their massive stone construction, barrel vaulted ceilings, rounded arches, which are Roman, minimal decoration. Because they relied on the massive, a lot of stone, the windows had to be small, and so they tended to they tended not to be. They tended to be on the dark, like kind of dark on the inside, which is important because when we get to Gothic, you'll see that changes in engineering allowed them to make the churches look much lighter on the inside. All right. So you see the difference in like the St. Peter's on the right from early days, and then different churches that were really in this what's called a cruciform plan, where it is more like a cross. Okay, so this is in a different church, a west portal of Saint-Lazare in Autun, Burgundy, which is western France. So this is a good example of what the Middle Ages was kind of about. Let this terror appall those bound by earthly sin, inscribed over the portal. Fear. That was a really good way to keep people in line. Fear of judgment, fear of eternal damnation. And these, you can, again, similar to the, if you compare this to Roman and Greek sculpture, it's stylized, it's very interesting, and it is very beautiful in a lot of ways, but it's not that, it doesn't have that realism. Even this Egyptian with the, sort of like everything like very flat. Heads are profile, bodies are turned facing front almost. So simpler in terms of its sophistication. Here's another Saint Philibert in Tournou. Around the summer. So these churches took a little while to build. Some of them, they either ran out of money, lightning, like, there were like fires, lightning, like, some of these, like the wooden parts, like the wooden roof would get hit by lightning, or the spire might get hit by lightning and it might catch on fire, it might weaken and collapse. There are a lot of reasons why these churches took a long time. And they were also still trying to like figure out how to get back to what the Romans were able to do, because they could go. Some people were able to, not very many people didn't travel the way they travel now, certainly. But there was an awareness of the old Roman civilization. There were still, like the aqueducts were still around in southern France. Some of the like in Rome. All the architecture of Rome was largely still there. Okay, so windows, again, windows are small. So the nave, this is like the longest part of the church from the main entrance heading toward the altar. Okay, there's a comparison of Saint Philibert and Notre Dame, which is a Gothic church. Here is the more of the upper. Those are the clerestory windows. So you can see how small the windows are. Now here, for the last bit on the Romanesque period, we go to England, Durham in northeastern England, early 12th century, 1100s. So you can see there's like the beginnings of Gothic elements along with Romanesque elements. The arches are curved like Roman, they're circular arches like along the side of the nave and up in the arcade above. But you can see the beginnings of this sort of like crossing ribbed vaults, which becomes a feature of Gothic architecture. You can see the simple, like this sort of like zigzag or chevron pattern on the column. and you see like the capital. That capital is like a really interesting, simple design that's really not related to anything Greek or Roman or Egyptian or anything. It's almost like it's a barbarian capital. Shows the texture, like the scoring of that chevron pattern on the column. So the stone blocks were cut. So that's built out of stone blocks. And then you can see some of the clustering of the columns. They would do this at like make it look almost like it's a bundle of columns supporting one of the arches. Okay, so this upper part, the arcade is this like upper section. It's above the nave, right above that aisle around the side. And you'll see this like they'll have the repetition of the arches, so that you can see into the nave from the arcade. And here, quadrant vaults in the triforium of Durham Cathedral, precursor to the Gothic flying buttress. Quadrant vaults. Not quadrant, it's a quadrant vault. So that curved, you see this like it's almost like it's like a half arch that is up against the vertical, like the base of that vault, and it's helping to hold it up. And it's attached to the outer wall of the church, and so it uses the structure of the lower part of the church to hold up the higher part of the church, so they can go taller. You'll see this when we look at the Gothic stuff next, and you see the flying buttress. You'll see how that is related to it. Okay, so here's a comparison to like an earlier Romanesque and then later in Durham, which is really a transitional church. Okay. All right. Now, what to talk about? The Gothic architecture, since we just went through all that stuff. If you have questions, ask me. All right, so here's a drawing detail of the flying buttress, a load-bearing semi-detached buttress found in Gothic architecture that forms a partial arch away from the wall it supports. Buttresses made larger interior spans and larger windows possible because it supported the upper part of the wall from the side, not, so there's support from the bottom, but they couldn't go that tall without something else holding up the wall. So the buttress, get back here. This like structural vertical element, it's attached to the outside of the building. It's really part of the exterior wall, and it's not like at the top. You can see it's not there's nothing on top of it, so it's not a column. It's a buttress. And then here, flying buttresses, they go from the buttress to the interior wall. Hold it up. I'm sorry, I'm calling the arcade, the triforium, the arcade. I'm sorry, sometimes I get mixed up.
So the buttress is actually the long column that faces the outer wall.
Yes, it is really a part of the outer wall.
Okay.
Is the buttress, that upright.
Okay, and then the flying buttress is what they call, because it essentially looks like it could be flying.
Yes.
is what makes that half arch.
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make
Yeah.
sure. Thank
So
you.
it's above the, yeah, so it's like there's a roof over that arcade, that lower part of the arcade, that, and then there's that, there's space up there between, underneath the flying buttress.
Would there be windows there, or is it just open space?
That's just open space.
It's not something that you would be able to see from the inside.
If the windows are stained glass, probably not. But you could.
Okay, so it's just part of it's just part of the structure to hold up the entire church.
Yes. So basically,
Okay.
it's a support for the upper part of the wall.
Okay. Just wanted to confirm.
Yep. And that allows the wall. That allows the wall to be lighter, and it allows for larger window openings, which allowed them to get more light into these churches. They could also build them taller.
Yeah, that makes sense. I just wasn't sure if it allowed, if it was something that was covered essentially by a wall, or if windows were essentially placed there, or if it was just kind of like a stud inside of a wall.
Yeah, more like that.
Yeah,
I mean,
okay.
it's propping up the upper part of the wall.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah, it's like a strut. Okay, so here, interesting Gothic feature. The Gothic churches feature some unique capital designs. They often use multiple capital, like leafy capital designs throughout a church. You see on the right a Greek Corinthian capital, and then you see this, oak leaf. In England especially, the oak was an important and symbolic tree, and so the oak leaf is something that was part of their ornament. And definitely, the idea of having a decorative capital like that definitely goes back to the Romans, the Greeks, and the Egyptians, the Persians. Okay. Gothic ribbed vaulting. So you see here on this, like the upper part of the church, it's almost all windows just beneath the roof. And so you can't, from here, you can't see the flying buttress holding it up. Maybe you see a shadow of it. But they, on a sunny day, it gets light in there. Okay, so here's the Church of Saint Denis. And you can see, there is the choir. You won't need to know what part of the church the choir is. There's a lot to it. If you were studying history, you would need to know those things, or architecture if you were getting a degree in architectural history. Check out the two different capital designs, and you can also see here the complexity of the rib structure. And the ribbed vaulting is also something that it distributes the load down the column better than like a barrel vault or a groin vault. Doesn't distribute the weight downward as well as ribbed vaulting. I'm going to show you in a short video what the ribbed vaulting. Actually, let me show you this here. We'll come back to this in a sec. There. So I found this video of some architecture students. It's a almost 3-minute video. It is time lapse. It's very quick. It is these a large group of people building a rib vault. There's sort of like a series of ribbed vaults. What it shows you is that like the way domes and arches and vaulting were originally built is that they built a wooden structure underneath it first, or they built a wooden structure and then they built the vault on top of it. And then when it was all done and the mortar was dry, they took the wooden structure out. So watch this. Ta-da. And then you take the wooden structure out when everything is dry and it stands up. Ta-da. Then you have a party. Whee! Okay. That you will find here in course materials. Vaults. I should move this to the Gothic section right there. So there's also some internet links to differences between groin vaults and rib vaults. So info. Yeah. All right, let's go back to this here. Okay. Notre Dame. Did any of you hear about the roof burning last summer or last spring?
Yes.
Yes.
Just terrible. Now that spire in the middle is not original to the Middle Ages. That was built in the 19th century, made of cast iron, and that fell when the roof burned. Um, Interestingly, the ribbed vaulting stood up. Like it kept like the roof has like a lot of wood, and that burned away. But the stone structure was largely stable. Now you can see here the flying buttresses, especially on the right side. You can see how they project, like they just project upward to the upper part of the wall, and that provides a lot of stability, so the windows can be larger. Here is the main facade with these three portals to yeah, it's interesting that they would put in that spire in the center from the 19th century, but and a friend of mine who is from, she grew up in and around Paris, and she tells me that at some point a lot of the like old architecture, really a lot of everything, thanks to pollution from using coal in the 19th century, all this stone was very. Elliot, man, put it. Okay, sorry, he's got to walk on this. Yeah, there we go. So this is all clean. They cleaned all these old buildings to make them look more the way they did originally. But you might see old photos where like Notre Dame looks very dark. Okay. So here is the interior. So there you can see the comparison again with the Romanesque church on the left, Gothic on the right. In this case, it's much taller, thanks to the engineering, and the windows are larger. Okay. Pointed arch. So the pointed arch is a feature of Gothic architecture, as opposed to the sort of like semicircular Roman arch. Again, note the difference in the capital, just like the design of the capital, of those columns sitting next to each other. So the arcade above the ground level arches is Triforia. Flying buttresses, pinnacles, crockets, and finials. So pinnacles are these small little towers on the tops of the buttresses, little pointy little towers. A spire is a much larger structure. So those little guys are pinnacles. Crockets, you see the texture? It's like a little folded up like leaf. Is a crocket. It's used in Gothic ornament a lot. And finials are really just like something that's like attached to the top. So you can see a little finial like up there. Chart, some of the best stained glass that was ever made. All right, and these two spires built in different centuries. Sometimes they decide. There was competition from church to church, and they would sometimes one church would build a taller spire, and then another church would decide, well, we're going to build. We can't stand for this. We have to build a taller spire. Everybody wanted to have the tallest spire. And there were sometimes a lightning strike might destroy it, and so they would one spire would have to be rebuilt at a later time. There are a lot of reasons why you see spires of different heights and clearly from different eras. All right, and this is a detailed diagram, I guess, of all the different parts of the of a cathedral. You really don't need to memorize all this stuff. Some of it is important because it is part of, like, I guess, sort of part of the overall structure. Like a lancet is a tall, slender window. Tracery is the structure, like usually in this case stone, kind of like the almost like framing, like it's yeah, it's like the part that encloses the stained glass. Rose window is a great big circular window. So that diagram is there. I mean, really, I think it's good. It's a good diagram to refer to. All right, chart. Up above the arcade. Love those columns, those capitals. And here, so this cathedral is known for its stained glass. And you see there's a rose window and then the lancet windows below, those tall, slender windows. This is a tree of Jesse. So these are illustrations of the Christian Old Testament, New Testament. But the sophistication in the stained glass is pretty great. This is Saint-Pierre in Beauvais. I like this really has a menacing appearance. I love how it's like small and it's like so spiky. Yeah, it's kind of a favorite of mine. But of course, the inside is like other Gothic churches, is pretty light because all those windows up at the top, letting all that light in. Imagine how dark it would be if they didn't have all those windows up there. Okay, and England, Salisbury Cathedral. This is getting late in the Middle Ages, so we're getting into the more sophisticated stuff. Lighter in terms of, lighter in color on the inside. Still has the pointed arches, ribbed vaulting, and you see the columns sort of designed as if they're in clusters. They don't have to be. That's a design element. There's a really nice smoothness to this design. Looks like drainage pipes. I love it. And here in the chapter house of the Salisbury Cathedral, you see a unique, whoops, there we go, a fan vault, which is really it's a type of vault commonly associated with English Gothic, and it's really like multiple ribbed vaults crossing each other, coming off of that central column. And you can see here with these, back there, the windows behind it They look like they're kind of like flower, or like they have like a petal, like leaf petals. The There are terms for us like different like window designs in Gothic: quatrefoil, trefoil, cinquefoil. Trefoil is three. It's three foils or three leaves. Quatrefoil, four. So it looks kind of like a clover. I don't know that for the one with like like they do like octafoil. I don't think they bother. But you can see all the stone marking out the design, like the circle and all those the leaf or foil shapes. That's tracery. Okay, quiet screen, kind of like a blind arcade. So so this is like a this arcade, which is this series of columns and arches, is built into a wall. It's not. It's really more of a decorative feature. And a tomb of Gilles de Bridgeport right in the cathedral. And this Winchester Cathedral, that I love the detail. Just kind of like it's like just dripping with detail up above and behind the altar. Okay, and here the bishop's throne, which is a seat of honor, of course. This is really architecture in miniature for this very important seat. Okay, and then you see up here, crockets, all that like bud-like texture. Get you a better picture of a crocket when we come back from the break. Okay, so stay signed in. We're going to have a break here. 7:16. At around 7:25, we will start back up. Stay signed in so I can take attendance. Stop sharing my screen.